The autumn wind swept across the vast fields of Millbrook County, Montana, carrying with it the scent of harvested wheat and the promise of an early winter. The Morrison family farm stretched for 300 acres, a patchwork of golden stubble and dark soil that had been worked by 3 generations. At its heart stood a weathered red barn, its paint peeling but its structure solid, and a 2-story farmhouse with a wraparound porch where Daniel Morrison sat every evening, watching the sun set over his land. Daniel was 34, broad-shouldered from years of physical labor, with calloused hands and sun-weathered skin that made him look older than his years. His father had passed 2 years ago, leaving him to run the farm alone. The loneliness had become a constant companion, filling the spaces between morning chores and evening rounds. His mother, Margaret, had moved to Billings to live with his sister, unable to bear the memories that haunted every corner of the property. The town of Millbrook was small, the kind of place where everyone knew everyone's business, where Sunday services at the Baptist church were as mandatory as breathing, and where traditions held more weight than progress. Daniel had grown up here, knew every family, every story, every secret whispered behind hands at the general store. He'd dated Sarah Hutchins for 3 years, everyone expecting a proposal that never came. She'd wanted him to sell the farm, move to Bozeman, start fresh. He couldn't do it. The land was in his blood. It was October when Maya Rodriguez arrived in Millbrook, driving a beat-up Honda Civic with California plates and everything she owned crammed into the back seat. She'd taken a job as a waitress at Rosie's Diner, the only restaurant in town, and rented a small apartment above the hardware store. Maya was 28, with dark hair that fell in waves past her shoulders, brown eyes that seemed to hold secrets, and a quiet demeanor that the townspeople immediately found suspicious. "Where's she from?" they asked. "What's she running from?" they whispered. "A city girl won't last a month here," they predicted. Daniel first saw her on a Tuesday morning when he stopped at the diner for breakfast after a pre-dawn trip to the feed store. She moved between tables with efficient grace, her notepad ready, her smile polite but distant. When she took his order, 2 eggs over easy, bacon, wheat toast, black coffee, her voice was soft, almost hesitant. "You new in town?" Daniel asked, trying to be friendly. "Just passing through," Maya replied, her eyes not quite meeting his. But weeks turned into months, and Maya didn't leave. She worked double shifts at the diner, kept to herself, declined every invitation to church socials and town events. The women of Millbrook watched her with narrowed eyes, noting how she never shared details about her past, how she flinched slightly when men raised their voices, how she seemed to carry a sadness that no amount of Montana sunshine could burn away. "She's troubled," Eleanor Patterson declared at the weekly quilting circle. "Mark my words, not marriage material," Agnes Thornton agreed, her needles clicking with emphasis. "A man needs a woman with roots, with family, with a proper upbringing." Daniel found himself thinking about Maya more than he should. There was something in her careful movements, in the way she watched the world as if expecting it to turn on her at any moment, that stirred something protective in him. He started going to the diner more often, always sitting in her section, making small talk that she politely deflected. "How are you settling in?" he'd ask. "Fine, thank you," she'd respond, already moving to the next table. "If you need anything, I'm just out on the Morrison Farm." "That's kind of you." But there was a wall there, invisible but solid, and Daniel respected it, even as he wondered what had built it so high. It was late November, the night before Thanksgiving, when Daniel's life intersected with Maya's in a way neither of them expected. His prize mare, Stella, was due to foal any day, and Daniel had been sleeping in the barn, checking on her every few hours. The temperature had dropped below freezing, and he'd set up space heaters to keep the barn warm enough for the birth. Around 2 in the morning, Daniel woke to the sound of his truck engine starting. He bolted upright, heart pounding, and rushed to the barn door. Through the darkness, he could see his truck's taillights heading down the long driveway toward the main road. For a moment, fury and confusion warred in his chest. Someone was stealing his truck. He grabbed his phone to call the sheriff, then stopped. Something made him pause. Instead, he climbed into his old farm truck, the one he kept for hauling equipment, and followed at a distance, headlights off, navigating by the moon's pale light. The stolen truck didn't go far. It turned off the main road about 2 miles from his property, pulling into an abandoned dairy farm that had stood empty for 5 years. Daniel parked and approached on foot, his boots crunching softly in the frost-covered grass. As he got closer, he saw light spilling from the broken windows of the old dairy barn. What he found inside stopped him in his tracks. The barn had been transformed. Old blankets hung from the rafters, creating makeshift walls. Space heaters hummed in the corners, and scattered throughout the space were people, families mostly, huddled together on sleeping bags and old mattresses. There were at least 20 people, maybe more, ranging from elderly folks to young children. They looked exhausted, scared, and cold despite the heaters. And there, in the center of it all, was Maya. She was kneeling beside an older woman who was coughing violently, holding a cup of hot liquid to her lips. Maya's car was parked inside the barn, and she was unloading grocery bags, food, bottled water, blankets, medicine. Daniel watched in stunned silence as she moved from person to person, checking on them, distributing supplies, speaking in low, soothing tones. "The heaters should last through the night," she was saying. "I'll bring more propane tomorrow. Mrs. Chen, please take this antibiotic. Jose, make sure the children stay away from the heaters." Daniel stepped into the light, and conversation stopped. Every eye turned to him. Maya stood slowly, her face pale, resignation settling over her features like a shroud. "I can explain," she said quietly. "I think you'd better," Daniel replied, his voice neutral. Maya glanced at the people around her, then gestured for Daniel to follow her outside. They stood in the cold night air, their breath forming clouds between them. "They're migrants," Maya began, her words coming faster now, as if a dam had broken. "Farm workers mostly. They've been traveling through Montana following the harvest season. But winter came early this year, and they got stranded. No work, no money, nowhere to go. The local authorities, they're not exactly welcoming. I found them 3 weeks ago, sleeping under the bridge near Route 87. I couldn't just leave them there." "So you've been helping them," Daniel said. "I've been doing what I can. I work double shifts to buy supplies. I found this place. I thought it was abandoned enough that no one would notice. I've been bringing them food, blankets, trying to find them places to go. There's a church in Bozeman that helps migrants, but they're full. I've been calling every shelter within 200 miles. And my truck?" Maya's face flushed with shame. "I needed to move some of the supplies. My car's too small. I was going to bring it back before dawn. I swear I was. I know it was wrong. You could have asked. Would you have said yes? You don't even know me." Daniel was quiet for a long moment, studying her face in the moonlight. Her eyes were bright with unshed tears, her jaw set with defiant pride, even as she waited for his judgment. "Before you continue with this story, we'd love to know, where are you watching from? Drop your country or city in the comments below. And if you're enjoying this story, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss what happens next. Trust me, you'll want to see how this unfolds." Now back to the story. "My grandfather came from Mexico," Daniel said finally. 1943, worked the farms in California, sent money home to his family. He wasn't documented, didn't speak English. People called him every name in the book, treated him like he was less than human, but he worked harder than any man I've ever known. Saved every penny, eventually became a citizen, bought his own land, this land. He always said that dignity isn't something you're given, it's something you claim, one day at a time." Maya stared at him, confusion and hope warring on her face. "Come on," Daniel said, turning back toward the barn. "Let's get these people somewhere warm." What followed was a night that would change everything. Daniel helped Maya load the families into his trucks, both of them, and drove them to his farm. The house wasn't big enough for everyone, but the barn was spacious, well heated, and had running water in the adjoining workshop. He and Maya worked until dawn, setting up proper sleeping areas, bringing blankets from the house, making coffee and breakfast. The older woman Maya had been helping, Mrs. Chen, turned out to have pneumonia. Daniel called Doc Harrison, the only doctor in town who still made house calls, and convinced him to come out on the premise of checking on a sick farmhand. Doc Harrison was 72, had seen everything, and asked no questions he didn't need answers to. "She needs antibiotics and rest," he said, writing a prescription. "Keep her warm and hydrated. And Daniel, whatever you're doing here, be careful. Not everyone in this town is as open-minded as your grandfather was." The families stayed in Daniel's barn. He told anyone who asked that he'd hired some seasonal workers for winter repairs. Not entirely a lie. The men helped him fix fences, repair equipment, prepare the fields for spring. The women helped in the house, cooking meals that filled the kitchen with unfamiliar, delicious scents. The children played in the yard, their laughter a sound the farm hadn't heard in years. And Maya transformed before his eyes. The walls she'd built came down brick by brick. She smiled more readily, laughed at jokes, told stories about growing up in Los Angeles, about studying social work in college, about the boyfriend who'd turned violent, about leaving everything behind and driving until she ran out of road. "I was running," she admitted one evening as they sat on the porch, watching the families eat dinner in the barn. "From him, from my own failures, from the feeling that I couldn't help anyone, couldn't fix anything. Then I found them under that bridge and, I don't know, I couldn't run anymore." "You're not running now," Daniel said. "No," she agreed. I'm not. But Millbrook was a small town, and secrets had a way of coming to light. It was Eleanor Patterson who noticed first. She lived down the road and made it her business to watch everything through her binoculars. She saw the children playing, the unfamiliar faces, the activity at the Morrison Farm. Daniel Morrison is harboring illegals, she announced at church the following Sunday, her voice ringing with righteous indignation. Right there on his family farm. It's a disgrace. Someone needs to call Immigration and Customs Enforcement. The town split down the middle. Half the people agreed with Eleanor, citing law and order, proper channels, American values. The other half remembered their own grandparents and great-grandparents who'd come to Montana with nothing, who'd been helped by neighbors, who'd built their lives from scratch. Sheriff Tom Reeves came out to the farm on a cold December morning. He was an old friend of Daniel's father, had known Daniel since he was born. I've got people demanding I do something, Tom said, standing in Daniel's kitchen. I've got calls to ICE that I'm required to make, but I also know what your grandfather would have done, what your father would have done. What are you saying, Tom? I'm saying you've got about 48 hours before federal agents show up here. I can't stop that, but I can be slow about processing the paperwork. What you do with that time is your business. Daniel and Maya worked frantically. She called every contact she had, every shelter, every church, every advocacy group. The church in Bozeman came through. They'd just received a large donation and could take all the families, provide temporary housing, legal help, job placement services. The families left on a Thursday morning, packed into a rented bus that Maya paid for with money she'd saved over 3 years of working 3 jobs in Los Angeles. They cried as they left, hugging Daniel and Maya, promising to repay their kindness someday. Mrs. Chen, now recovered, held Maya's face in her weathered hands. You gave us more than shelter, she said in accented English. You gave us back our dignity. We will not forget. After they left, the farm felt emptier than it ever had before. Daniel found Maya in the barn, sitting in the space where the families had been, tears streaming down her face. Hey, he said softly, sitting beside her. You did a good thing. They're safe now. I know, she whispered. I got used to them being here, to having people around, to feeling like I was making a difference. You made all the difference, Daniel said. To them, to me. She looked at him, really looked at him, for the first time without walls between them. The whole town is talking, she said. They're saying terrible things about you, about me. Eleanor Patterson called me a criminal sympathizer at the grocery store yesterday. Agnes Thornton said I corrupted you, that I'm not marriage material, Daniel finished. Yeah, I heard. I'm sorry I brought this trouble to you. Maya, you brought life to this place. You reminded me why my grandfather loved this land so much. It wasn't just about the crops or the property lines. It was about having something worth sharing, worth protecting, worth passing on. You gave me that back. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, shoulders touching. So what happens now? Maya asked. Now we face whatever comes together. If you want to stay, that is. Stay? I could use a partner. Someone who knows how to run a farm, how to handle crisis, how to care about people more than profit. Someone brave enough to steal my truck in the middle of the night for a good cause. Maya laughed through her tears. I'm still sorry about that. I'm not, Daniel said. If you hadn't taken that truck, I never would have followed you, never would have seen who you really are. And who am I? Someone extraordinary. Someone marriage material, despite what the gossips say. Maya's breath caught. Daniel, I'm not proposing, he said quickly. Not yet. I want you to know that I see you, all of you, and I'm not scared off by your past or your scars or your tendency to take in strays. In fact, I kind of admire it. She leaned her head on his shoulder. I'd like to stay. Good. The gossip continued for a while, but gradually it faded. Other scandals emerged. Other dramas took center stage. And when spring came, bringing with it new life and new possibilities, Daniel and Maya were still there, working the land side by side. Mrs. Chen sent letters from Bozeman, updating them on the families. Jose had found work at a restaurant. The children were enrolled in school. Mrs. Chen herself was volunteering at the church, helping other migrants find their footing. They'd all obtained temporary protected status while their asylum cases were processed. We are planting roots, Mrs. Chen wrote, just as you taught us. On a warm evening in May, as the fields turned green with new wheat, Daniel took Maya out to the spot where his grandfather was buried, on a hill overlooking the farm. I used to come here and talk to him, Daniel said. Tell him about the farm, about my problems, about feeling lost. I stopped coming after my father died. Felt like I'd disappointed them both, like I couldn't live up to their legacy. And now, Maya asked, now I realize their legacy wasn't about being perfect. It was about doing the right thing, even when it's hard, even when people judge you for it. You taught me that. He turned to face her, taking her hands in his. Maya Rodriguez, you challenged everything I thought I knew about myself, about this town, about what matters in life. You showed me that home isn't just a place, it's the people you choose to stand beside, and I choose you. Every day, for the rest of my life, I choose you. He pulled out a simple gold band, worn smooth by time. This was my grandmother's ring. My grandfather gave it to her when he finally had enough money to afford gold. She wore it every day for 53 years. It's not fancy, but it's real, like us. Maya was crying again, but smiling through the tears. Yes, she whispered. Yes, 1,000 times yes. They married in a small ceremony at the farm, officiated by the pastor from Bozeman who ran the migrant shelter. The families they'd helped came, bringing food and music and joy. The townspeople who'd supported them came. Even Sheriff Tom Reeves came, bringing a bottle of whiskey and his blessing. Eleanor Patterson and Agnes Thornton did not come, but they stood at their windows, watching, whispering. Within a year, even they had to admit that Maya Morrison was good for Daniel, good for the farm, good for the community. She started a volunteer program connecting farms with workers who needed jobs, creating a system that was legal, ethical, and beneficial to everyone. She taught ESL classes at the community center. She became a bridge between worlds. And on quiet nights, when Daniel and Maya sat on their porch watching the sun set over the fields, they remembered those families in the barn, remembered the choice to see humanity over politics, remembered that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is open your heart when the world tells you to close it. They said I wasn't marriage material, Maya said one evening, her hand resting on her growing belly, their first child sleeping peacefully inside. They were wrong, Daniel replied, kissing her forehead. You're exactly what this farm needed, what I needed, what this world needs more of. And in the barn, where families had once found shelter, where life had been preserved and dignity restored, the ghosts of Daniel's grandfather and father smiled, knowing that their legacy lived on, not in the land alone, but in the choices their descendant made to honor the truth that all people deserve compassion, kindness, and a chance to prove who they really are. The Morrison Farm continued to thrive, its fields golden with wheat, its barns filled with purpose, its home alive with love. And Maya Rodriguez Morrison, once dismissed by those who couldn't see past their own prejudices, became the heart of it all, proving that the measure of a person isn't where they come from, but what they choose to do when they arrive. Because sometimes the people we dismiss as not marriage material turn out to be exactly the heroes we need. All we have to do is take the time to see what they do when they think no one is watching. That's when you discover who they truly are. And sometimes that's when you find the person worth building a life with, one brave choice at a time.